Hey there and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. My name is Pete and today we complete another chapter of this honor mode walkthrough with our Dark Urge Halfling Bard, Sylvia Hairyfoot. Last time we left off after discovering the Festering Cove, the secret home of a Kuatoa tribe worshipping Bual, alleged god of murder, in truth, a redcap in disguise. We exposed Bual, defeated the redcap imposter in a fight and usurped its role, and so the Kuatoa named us their new god, Makloompa. And, well, today Makloompa and her friends will explore the Arcane Tower. We've been pointed here by the mind flayer Omeluum, who might be able to brew a powerful potion for us if we're able to find 2 specific mushrooms. Those mushrooms can reportedly be found in Lenore's Arcane Tower, so that is where we will go today, and if you're wondering about the blue shimmer around our characters, that is in fact the anti-magic field from a Sussur flower, or rather all 4 Sussur Blooms we found near the Sussur tree. I've given them all to Astarion, and he's going to need them shortly. For now though, let's head out. The tower is actually very close to where we left off last time.
Scorched ground. Better watch out.
And, well, the game already watches out for us by putting us into turn-based mode here, and with good reason, we have just been targeted by an arcane turret. Sturdy and with various damage resistances, this turret is actually quite a bit tougher than it may look at first. It does have a vulnerability to lightning damage, and that would be one avenue to take it down. However, there is another, arguably much more simple method. Let us first break line of sight with Sylvia and then double dash with Astarion. That way we can bring him and, crucially, the Sussur Bloom in his inventory right next to the turret and shut it down. This also gives Gale an inspiration, however, the effect is only temporary and will vanish as soon as we remove the Sussur Bloom, so let's drop one of the 4 that Astarion currently carries. That way the anti-magic field will remain in this spot as long as we need it. And that is actually very important because, unfortunately, there is a second turret just up ahead, and once more we activate turn-based mode here to get close without getting shot. Then it's rinse and repeat. Let's drop a Sussur Bloom next to the turret to shut it down and leave turn-based mode, and with that all of the Arcane Tower's exterior defenses have been shut down, and we can finally roam around freely with our entire party and explore the area. Early on, most of what we can find are mushrooms, rather fitting I'd say, considering what we're here for. We also earn 80 XP for officially getting close enough to the tower to discover it, and there is some treasure to be found too, a locked chest over here in the southeastern corner of the area. Let's have Astarion go and pick it open. Very important, we will not be able to benefit from guidance for this. After all, guidance is a spell, and we carry powerful anti-magic plants with us. Inside the chest then we find a Skybreaker, a light hammer, so one that can be thrown, and it also gives its wielder the ability to cast Searing Smite, an extra 1d6 fire damage applied on the attack and on all subsequent turns for 10 rounds. Also in the area we can find a grand total of 3 bronze ingots and a regular light hammer, so maybe some sort of magical crafting went on here. There's a letter over here that perhaps reveals a bit more. In this letter, Lenore begs a person named Ear, who she seems to be in love with, to wait for her. Ear seems to be a lightning inventor, and someone named Bernard is also mentioned to be roaming the tower. In a different script, Ear also wrote that they did wait, but Lenore never returned from what was supposed to be only a short trip to Baldur's Gate.
That might be worth a look.
So maybe we'll find out more about their story as we progress here. For now, let us dig up some buried treasure. Inside, the first of many spell scrolls we'll be able to find in this tower, a tower that we will now finally see about getting into.
A wizard's tower is his sanctum, private place for research and respite. But as this wizard's not home, I say we take a peek.
And taking a peek we shall. There's 2 options to do so here, either a locked front door or a broken window on the left. Looking through though, we can see another arcane turret waiting for us, so perhaps we try the door instead. A lockpicking DC of 15 shouldn't be too difficult for Astarion. As soon as the door opens, we then want to enter turn-based mode once more, because there is not 1 but 2 turrets waiting for us inside, as well as some form of contraption in the center of the room. For now though, our first target is the turret on the right, the tower's northern side. Once more, we double dash to get close and then drop a Sussur flower to shut it down. At this point, we can exit turn-based mode and note that the turret on the other side has not even noticed us yet. Time to investigate what lies beyond the door here.
That chest's magic. Its energy has me on a tingle.
Indeed, there is a chest on the balcony here, and if we get close with a Sussur Bloom in our inventory, this happens. The anti-magic field dispels a magical effect on the chest, and we can now access all of its contents, including Mistress Grace, a pair of boots giving their wearer access to the Featherfall spell. These boots can actually be quite useful in this tower, more on that later. Suffice it to say, there is definitely a good reason why they're here, and why they're hidden. Now, once all the loot from the balcony here has been collected, we head back inside and sneak up onto the second turret. It can sometimes happen that it spots you during the approach. In that case, staying behind the pillar here keeps you safe. At this point then, we drop our fourth and final Sussur Bloom to shut it down, and with that we can now finally move the entire rest of the party inside. The lightning theme from earlier then returns, as a bit of broken machinery here is an alchemical ingredient in a potion of lightning resistance. Let's keep that in mind and turn our attention to a book. A bit of poetry is marked, describing how there's a light in every living thing crawling to the surface trying to survive, and in its wake tramples everything.
Seems like the owner was quite the literary type.
The book's name now also changes to Evil's Ascent. Let's keep that in mind as we now head for the door on the tower's western side. Here we only find an empty, somewhat disheveled-looking balcony overlooking a mushroom garden. This also reveals to us that there are a few tower floors still left below us. Maybe we can access them with what looks to be an elevator here, complete with ascent and descent buttons.
Looks like some kind of magical contraption. Now to get it to work.
Right, so it appears whatever this is, it doesn't work at the moment, and while we don't find a way to fix that out on the southern balcony here, this balcony does in theory present us with a way down, as we could jump down the mushrooms on the side here to either enter the floor below or the tower's garden. However, that is not the route we're going to take. Admittedly though, ours will be quite similar, but it takes us back to the western balcony. Standing on this balcony with our entire party, we now want to switch to Gale and have him cast Featherfall on everyone. It is a ritual spell and therefore does not cost us a spell slot, and even though, as you can see, it can be a little bit tricky to set up, it now allows our entire party to safely jump down into the garden. This is also why earlier I commented on the usefulness of those Featherfall boots, but since Gale already knows the spell, there is no need for them. It does make sense that Lenore had them stashed on the balcony though, perhaps as an alternate means of getting into her home. Now, from here you can also see it, we could jump up these mushrooms to get up to the floor above. However, let us clear out the mushroom garden first, which, among other things, includes 2 more Sussur Blooms, and we want to make sure to pocket them both. As our party is quick to notice though, these are not the only items of value down here. So, seems like Lenore has some treasure buried in her tower's backyard. Unsurprisingly, I think we find alchemy ingredients and another spell scroll. And, well, just like Gale said, with the owner nowhere in sight, we might as well help ourselves to it. At this point then, we also stumble across another door leading into the tower. Let's have Astarion go and pick the lock. The DC of 15 should once again be manageable. We still get advantage on the roll, by the way. Unlike the anti-magic field in D&D, magic items still work within the Sussur Bloom's area of effect. Heading inside, we now find ourselves in some sort of laboratory attached to the garden. We can gather a few alchemical ingredients from the table over on the right here, all of them various types of gemstones. Moving deeper into the room, we then notice something curious.
What's that?
Well, that is a very tiny hole.
I'm way too big.
Now, even though none of our characters fit through, this hole is still very useful as an alternate means of accessing the tower. As you can see, it leads to the outside, and you could, for example, send a mage hand through, which could then in turn pull the lever here by the door and open it that way. Since we are already inside, we have no need for that though, and can freely continue looting the place. More alchemical ingredients can be found on the table in the southeastern corner here, alongside a book that we want to read very carefully. This book details the anti-magic properties of Sussur tree flowers. However, it also goes on to say that their magical absorption makes them useful as power sources. Combine that with 3 withered blue petals lying in front of the power generator here, and I think our next task is clear. Let us inject one of these Sussur Blooms we just picked from the garden into the machine. That should hopefully be enough to power it on. Alright, beautiful. Lenore's Arcane Tower has been powered on. The magical elevator has also clearly sprung to life, and in just a few short moments we will be able to use it for the first time. For the first few meters, however, we will need to take the good old-fashioned stairs, which lead us right to a small gilded chest, a chest that contains an amulet that lets us cast Detect Thoughts. That could be rather useful in the right circumstances, however, for the time being, I think Speak with the Dead makes more sense. Either way, for now, after looting a few more alchemy ingredients, let's take the elevator here and ascend to the next floor. At this point, we now find ourselves inside of Lenore's greenhouse. We can see various plants and mushrooms growing inside here. The western balcony here, another means of potentially dropping down into the garden. We are more interested in the Timmask spores in the room's northwestern corner though. These Timmask spores are one of the 2 ingredients required for Omeluum's potion. Understandably, as a result, that quest now also updates, and after finding nothing on the northern balcony, we can now immediately complete its next stage, because the other ingredient, Tongue of Madness, is also found right here in the greenhouse. And with that, we now technically have everything we came to this tower for. Of course, we're not going to leave just yet, as there is much more still left to explore. The southern balcony here then once again part of an alternate means to access the tower, but I think by this point you get the idea, so let us move on to investigate a book in the southwestern corner. This too was once a play, but only 2 lines are still visible. How can I trust? How will I ever know? How can I show myself my darkest me? Somewhat fitting for a Dark Urge character, I'd say. Either way, let us keep those lines in mind and descend to the next floor, which is actually the one we originally came in through. Something has changed though, and it's not just the elevator. With the tower now powered on, the arcane turrets are actually disabled, which means we can now recover all of our Sussur Blooms as we are no longer in any danger. In addition, going back also allows us to grab the bullywug trumpet I overlooked earlier. So, with 5 Sussur Blooms back in our inventory, remember we used 1 to power the generator, we can now move up to the next floor. These seem to be Lenore's private chambers. From a bedside chest, we can then recover the Mage's Friend, a ring giving bonuses to Arcana and Religion checks, and very well suited to be worn by Gale, I think. In the northeastern corner then, next to a bone and a bowl, we find a curious button.
Wait, why did that strange dog collar just vibrate?
And yes, that dog collar is the one we picked up from that grave a few episodes ago, and if we now equip it and then press the button again, this happens.
Clever. Food is dispensed for anyone wearing this collar.
So, a steak for the dog, or at least the one wearing its collar. Sadly though, we will only ever receive this one.
Only one serving for me, I guess.
Moving on then, we can read a sad note on the table here. I think it's clear at this point that Lenore felt extremely lonely in this tower. Once more though, her poetry we want to remember. Rather surprisingly, I'd say, we then also find a Githyanki cipher on the table, useful if we ever want to decrypt ancient Gith writings. And, well, we will encounter some of those sooner than you might think. First of all, though, a handwritten letter here reveals that the bullet that we fought and later employed ourselves was in fact one of Lenore's pet projects. Yes, she did in fact try to tame it. Also on the table is a book titled The Roads to Darkness, another play, this one about power, corruption and loneliness. In it, the line used by two friends to identify each other is this: "Or art thou, friend, a rescue from my lonely wake?" Once more, that's worth keeping in mind, and it is also worth searching the bookshelves here, as they contain not only various books, but also several spell scrolls. Most of those spells we of course already have access to in some form or another, but in my opinion it's never a bad idea to stock up, even if we just end up selling them. At this point then, we want to turn our attention to the engraved Githyanki disc over here.
Disc appears in your mind's eye. Lae'zel sees it too, and considers the vision.
Tirsu markings. Ancient. I recognize them, but I can't make sense. No. Wait. The texts are enciphered, but I've solved the pattern. It's a story. About Orpheus.
Your head buzzes in concert with Lae'zel's, but it hardly matters. Even without the connection, you'd recognize her discomfort.
So, this is one of the main reasons why Lae'zel is in the party today, and before we ask about Orpheus, let's find out what those Tirsu markings are.
Githyanki writing. Every word a wheel, every letter a spoke. The most powerful texts are engraved in slate. Some so ancient, only the most erudite Gish can read them.
So, ancient Githyanki texts that we could use that cipher on, but with Lae'zel in the party we don't need to, and can now instead learn about the tale of Orpheus.
A traitor. A dead one. This text is heresy. I can hardly bear to read it, let alone speak it.
And we are of course not dissuaded that easily. Let's prompt Lae'zel to please tell us what the text says.
Very well. I will read it to you. The Prince of the Comet, Part 1. So it was that we were free from Geich shackles and turned our blades on each other. The heavens were shattered, and one great empire was divided in two. Gith traveled to the Hells to broker help for her people, her cause. Vlaakith would have you believe Mother Gith proclaimed her our queen. Lies. Gith made no such proclamation. Vlaakith seized the empire against the mother's wishes. But Gith had nurtured a son, Orpheus, Prince of the Comet, the true heir. He knew Vlaakith's treachery. Orpheus rallied Gith's honor guard and declared the throne for himself. The War of the Comet had begun. Disregard this drivel. Gith declared Vlaakith queen of the Empire, and her own son defied her. Orpheus would have ceded control to the Geich.
So, a tale of intrigue and betrayal surrounding the Githyanki throne. Lae'zel puts it off as heresy, but what if it's true? What if Vlaakith is not actually who she proclaims to be?
She did nothing of the sort. Thank your good fortunes I'm a tolerant woman, or I'd have sliced off a few toes for suggesting it.
Right, so I don't know if you've noticed it, but this conversation actually gave us a small quest, so let's keep an eye open for more information about Orpheus and Vlaakith. At this point then, we want to shift our attention to yet another poem on the ground here. Since this will not come up again in the game, I can safely spoil that this is in fact a Durga mining chant. One phrase repeats itself: "The world belongs to the Grey." We have at this point also grabbed everything there is to grab on this floor, so let's take the elevator one level higher, where we discover that we are not alone in this tower.
New sounds to the Underdark oppression break. Is it the foe? Her foul, contemptuous heel?
Long hours spent studying at your college come back to you. This is the opening stanza of an old play, The Roads to Darkness.
Right, looks like we've finally discovered who or what Bernard is. The automaton speaks to us in poetry and we actually recognize it. Even without passing the history check, his greeting sounds familiar. And since we actually read The Roads to Darkness, we can now respond in kind, and we definitely want to do so. All other answers here will turn him hostile.
Come out of love for me, not love for blood and steel. Come on as if you feel, my lord, my liege.
Don't get me wrong. I love poetry as much as an ex-wizard, but using it to command an automaton seems a bit self-indulgent to me.
Now at this point, we are presented with a few more lines of poetry. Before we try any of them out though, let's stick to simple questions, like what this place actually is.
Unbeknownst to command that I cannot fulfill.
And we're even more unlikely to get an answer for the question who Bernard is, but let's try anyway.
Unbeknownst to command that I cannot fulfill.
Right, now then, let's talk poetry. All three lines here are only available to us because we read the pieces they're from. The first line comes from a withered play we found in the greenhouse. The third line stems from a torn-out paper from Lenore's bedroom. Meanwhile, the second line is the one we definitely want to avoid. It sounds harmless, but we know its origin to be a play called Evil's Ascent, and as such it will most likely not prompt a kind response. So let's go with the first line here. How can I trust? How will I ever know? How can I show myself my darkest me?
You know the deepest secret show. Reveal the truth. Do what you wish to see.
And there we go. We have avoided a fight and have been rewarded with the Guiding Light Ring, a ring that lets us cast the light cantrip, and it also serves another purpose. More on that in a moment. For now, let's take a closer look at the area and to the creatures, or rather constructs, in it. As you can see, Bernard is not the only one, but definitely the toughest of them all. Looking at his stats, we can see why it was wise to avoid a fight. Next to a very high AC of 19, he's also resistant to various damage types and has the alert feature, not to mention a legendary action that allows him to immediately counterattack after taking damage once per turn. He can also multi-attack and has a chance to stun enemies thanks to the overcharge feat. All in all, a formidable foe that we should respect as such. As you can see though, Bernard is not alone. The area on top of the tower here is also populated by 6 animated Armours. With an AC of 18, these are also not too easy to target. Their damage resistances are not quite as extensive though, and they are susceptible to anti-magic fields, which in practice looks like this. If we get close to one, with something like a Sussur Bloom in our inventory for example, then the armor immediately receives the incapacitated status. I think you can already see how we might be able to use this to our advantage. Before we do anything of the sorts though, let's loot the area. The bookshelf here contains a few spell scrolls, and we also just had Lazelle fail a perception check. Sylvia passes it to spot a lever on the wall. However, as we pull it, it is not quite clear what it actually does, so perhaps it has an effect on one of the other floors on the tower. Either way, for now we keep investigating the area. In the shelf and on the table next to Bernard here, we can find various pieces of broken machinery. Once again, these are useful in the creation of lightning resistance elixirs, and there's also a patched parchment on the table that we want to take a closer look at. The paper is described as looking well used but treasured, so how about we take it and try the line we just read on Bernard.
Command is fulfilled, my lord, my liege.
And the line we just studied is the first one here. These empty sheets are all that's left of you, the last of all the thoughtless gifts you gave. Let's find out how the automaton reacts to this.
I'll hold on to them. It's all that I can do. I can't throw them away. I've never been that brave.
Right, now the game never tells us this, but Bernard just handed us a greater healing potion. And to finish the conversation, let us now try the line about loneliness here.
Of course, my love. Don't be afraid, sweet girl.
His hands close around the air next to your face, as if he's taking the hands of someone taller.
What can I do? Say, would you like a hug?
And this is truly a bittersweet moment in my opinion, showing us just how desperately alone Lenore was, and of course, who can resist the temptation of hugging an automaton.
Come here, for just a moment. Don't let it out. Remember, you are loved, Lenore, so much. You're doing great, and everyone will be so proud of you. As I already am.
Right, like I said, a bittersweet interaction with Bernard here, especially considering what comes next. Before things get violent though, there is one more item we want to grab. No, it's not the broken machinery over here. Instead, using a character not carrying a Sussur Bloom in their inventory, we now want to sit on the stool of Hill Giant Strength here.
Now, what's this? I feel powerful.
And if we stand back up...
Oh, damn it. It's gone.
So, let's try to make that feeling a bit more portable.
This could do some damage. Waste not.
And indeed, by destroying the stool, we are now able to pick up a Club of Hill Giant Strength, a powerful item that, when wielded, sets the wielder's strength to 19. This club could be very useful for someone like Karlach, for example. In terms of damage output, it is of course atrocious, but she's mainly using throwing weapons anyway, so she wouldn't mind having it equipped, and it would allow us to respec her with a focus on other attributes, overall making for a more well-rounded character build. But there are of course other characters who would benefit from this too, and either way, it is not a decision we need to make at this point, because now I think unfortunately the time has come to pick a fight. From all we've been able to gather, it seems like Lenore is long gone and her tower in a state of disrepair. Her automaton and the animated armors are the only, well, more or less living things that remain. Now, regarding those animated armors, we of course already know how to incapacitate them. There are 6 of them, and while we only have 5 Sussur flowers in our inventory, those 5 will be enough, as 2 of the suits are standing so close together that they can be affected by 1 flower simultaneously. Once that's taken care of, we swap Lae'zel for Karlach and Will for Gale, and we will at this point also equip the Guiding Light Ring with Sylvia.
Must have been linked to that button.
Indeed, equipping that ring just revealed to us a 3rd button on the elevator labeled Basement, and just like that, we now find ourselves exactly there, and the place holds a few valuable items of interest. For starters, if we had not picked up Timmask, Spores and Tongue of Madness in the greenhouse, this cellar here is another place where we can find them. The various bookshelves down here are also once more a great source of spell scrolls. I think the Arcane Tower is home to a good dozen or so at least, very useful for a wizard character eager to learn new spells, and we might actually end up teaching a few of them to Gale down the line. In the room's southeastern corner then, a gilded chest contains the Sparks Wall, a ring that grants resistance from lightning damage and makes its wielder immune to being electrocuted. We also find Lenore's diary in this chest, which reveals that she's been gone for over 10 years at this point. The last entry here is dated 1481, while the events of Baldur's Gate 3 take place in 1492. Of course, there are more books and scrolls on the shelves nearby, and there is also one more very useful item that is more or less staring us in the face already. It is this one here, the Staff of Arcane Blessing. This staff lets its wielder cast Bless once per long rest. In addition, it also grants Mistress Blessing to anyone blessed by the wielder, an additional 1d4 bonus to spell attack rolls on top of the 1d4 bonus that Bless already gives. The item's description is unfortunately somewhat misleading in that regard, making it seem like an extra d4 is given to all attacks and saving throws, but again the effect only applies to spell attacks. Here we can now also pick up the aforementioned Tongue of Madness and then head for the exit. The metal door here leads us out to a set of stairs, which in turn leads back to the Arcane Tower's generator room. The reason why we didn't spot this passage earlier is because this doorway here was blocked. That is what the lever on top of the tower was for, opening and closing this entrance. Now, with all of that taken care of, let's take the arcane elevator back to the top of the tower. I've given the Staff of Arcane Blessing to Karlach for the time being, who can now use it to bless herself, Sylvia, and crucially, Will. Will is also already in position, the others meanwhile are not, so let's enter turn-based mode. That way we preserve as much of the bless effect as possible. Equipped with the Mistress Grace boots, Astarion is now also capable of casting Featherfall. This is mostly done as a precaution though. If everything goes according to plan, we will not need it. We then end our first turn of prep work here and shift our attention to Bernard once more, specifically to his alert feature, the main reason why Astarion is still in the party to begin with. For our plan to work, it is rather important that Astarion goes first in the initiative, and thanks to his abilities and equipment, he's got a greater than 80% chance of doing so. And there we go, the fight is officially on, and as Tarion enters the initiative first, 4 of the 6 animated armors are also surprised by the attack, but one way or another they are incapacitated, so the only enemy we need to worry about for the moment is Bernard. And with the rest of the party still hidden, we can now act freely, and despite Bernard's very high armor class and various damage resistances, there is a very easy way to deal a significant amount of damage. Will can simply Eldritch Blast him out of the window. And just like that, Bernard just suffered 49 points of damage from falling to the bottom of the tower, all thanks to the fact that we picked up Repelling Blast for Will, which makes this much more reliable than trying to shove or throw the 200 kilo automaton. Now, of course, we still need to deliver the finishing blow, and that is why we have Karlach positioned where she is. From up this high, her spear not only deals regular damage, but also bludgeoning crushing damage, for a total of 25 points of damage despite Bernard being resistant. With only 1 hit point left, a quick bonus action offhand shot from Sylvia then finishes the fight, or rather the challenging part of it. The animated armors now only require a bit of patience, while Bernard lies destroyed near the tower's entrance. You may have also noticed that we did not gain any experience points for taking him down. That is because we were already awarded 75 XP for defusing the situation peacefully earlier. The animated armors, however, will all give us 40 XP each. Now, the recording for this next section took a good 5 minutes. I think you'll forgive me for trimming the fat a little. With the armors all incapacitated and unable to move, this is like taking candy from a baby. We also still have Bless active to improve our hit chances, so all in all, this was a trivial affair. That Bless is, by the way, also one of the reasons why we did not put Karlach into a frenzy. Unfortunately, going into a rage breaks any and all concentration, not to mention that we're really not in any hurry to deal as much damage as possible here. At this point then, you can see it, we are already down to the last enemy, and if possible, I want to give the kill to Will here. I'll explain why in just a second. And there we go, the fight is over. Will receives a few temporary hit points because of his Dark One's blessing, and we can now loot the no longer animated armors. In terms of valuables though, they only carry their weapons. The spears you can see here all belong to Karlach. Of course, we also need to make sure that we pick all of our Sussur Blooms back up. Who knows when the next situation like this arises? They were an extremely powerful tool in this fight, and we might just have a use for them at some point down the line. For now though, we send them to our camp inventory and prepare to leave the tower. After a thorough inspection, there is nothing more of interest for us here to find. As our final task, we now want to loot the body of Bernard. Now, I hope you'll be able to see it in the dark, but Bernard's corpse has left an oil puddle, and I've seen it happen numerous times that this puddle gets randomly incinerated by a character stepping over it. Even without a torch equipped, this can happen, so for looting Bernard we're using Will, who has some temporary HP, and who can now pick up Light of Creation, a two-handed halberd, dealing extra lightning damage, but unfortunately also capable of stunning the wielder unless it is a construct. Probably not a weapon that we are going to use as we now return to Ebon Lake Grotto. As you can see, Astarion has also made room for Shadowheart in the party, who might prove useful as we now approach Omeluum with all the required mushrooms in our inventory.
I greet you, child of the sun. How has your search for the mushrooms fared?
And let us confirm real quick that we have brought both Timmask Spores and Tongue of Madness.
These are fine specimens. It will only take me a moment to brew them to proper potency.
Omeluum turns away to prepare the potion, lost in its own musings.
You must drink the entire draught. I can make no promises as to its taste.
And of course, before we mindlessly drink the potion, let us first inquire about its potential effects.
It will lower the psionic defenses around the lava. If I cannot remove it, I may still be able to tell you more about its origin.
Now, we fail the inside roll here, but that really doesn't change much. One way or another, everything in this conversation leads to this one moment. Let's down the potion and hope for the best.
The potion is disgusting beyond description. The only mercy is that it goes down quickly.
Not a drop left. Very good. As the potion influences your mind, you may find yourself acting irrationally. Try and stay focused.
The world loses its edges, its finer boundaries. You are fluid, but trapped like a creature suspended in amber.
Now, as you may have noticed, we succeeded a constitution save earlier, useful but not required for the best outcome here. The active saving throws that we can now make are a bit more important, and we've brought Shadowheart along because next to guidance she also has access to the resistance cantrip. This is essentially guidance but for saving throws. By the way, both of the rolls we were just offered are wisdom-based, not Sylvia's strongest attribute, so it's a good thing we still have those bliss spores active.
Dark holes bite at the edges of your vision, but the void cannot draw you in. The tadpole spasms, seizes. It's fighting the potion even harder than you are. Fear pierces your mind like knives of ice. The parasite digs deeper, as if it means to hollow out your skull.
Now, once again, the first two saves here are wisdom-based, number 3 is intelligence. For Sylvia, the difference doesn't really matter much, all of them have a DC of 15. But for a bard, attempting to drown out the tadpole by focusing on a tune seems the most appealing to me. Now, unfortunately, we fail this roll. This doesn't happen all too often, but when it does, it's usually no problem. After all, with 4 inspiration points stockpiled, we are ready to roll again.
The cold blades lose their edge. You are stalwart, turning that tide of fear against itself. The parasite swells with power, more power than you have ever felt before. It surges and twists, lashing out against that which would dare to intrude. The parasite in your mind quiets, pleased with itself.
Omeluum, are you well?
That lava is like nothing I have ever observed before. Its power is unsettling.
So, safe to say, like so many other attempts before, this was not really a success. As a matter of fact, it seemingly made our tadpole even more powerful than before.
Such an outcome was not in my calculations. There is more to this being than mere stasis.
So, seems like once more we underwent an excruciating procedure that ultimately led nowhere, but maybe Omeluum is a bit more versed on the subject and can tell us how to proceed from here.
Indeed. Although I may have another solution, albeit a temporary one. I possess a ring of mind shielding. It prevents elder brains from noticing my presence. It will not remove the lava, but it will limit its influence, both positive and negative. I would offer it as a gift, but in truth, the ring is priceless. Is there anything you could offer me in turn?
Well, I have to say, a good time to mention the existence of this ring would have been before we drank the potion, so before we decide on the matter of payment, let's ask why Omeluum didn't.
Because removal seemed preferable to negation, and I must admit, I was curious to study the tadpole myself.
So it was scientific curiosity that ultimately made things worse than they were before, so from Sylvia's perspective, I don't really see why we should now pay for that ring, and as a bard we get a special performance check here to hopefully convince Omeluum otherwise.
As Omeluum watches your performance, something stirs in his mind, unusual for an illithid. Joy.
Here, it is yours. May it serve you as well as it has served me.
I never thought we'd bargain with an illithid. Let's hope this ring...
Of course, the lava remains. Be ever vigilant of its growth.
So, there we are. In exchange for being Omeluum's test subject, we have acquired the Ring of Mind Shielding, granting its wearer advantage on saving throws against being charmed. In addition, we have also gained an ability the game did not really inform us about. With our tadpole growing stronger during Omeluum's procedure, we have unlocked Survival Instinct. A creature under the effect of this ability regains hit points if they fall to 0, very useful to prevent low health characters from falling unconscious.
I greet you, son-child.
The reason why we now speak to Omeluum again is because after completing the quest, the Mind Flayer becomes a fully fledged trader, and we can obtain a few interesting items here. First, the Pearl of Power amulet, which allows its wearer to restore a spell slot of up to 3rd level once per long rest. Then the Boots of Stormy Clamor, which inflict the reverberation condition on a creature when the wearer inflicts it with another condition. The reverberation condition, meanwhile, can be stacked. In a way, this works similarly to the lightning charges mechanic, only focused on the target and not the caster. The Ring of Salving then is a bit more straightforward. It simply restores 2 extra hit points every time the wearer heals another creature. And finally, we have the Shade Spell Circlet, granting its wearer a bonus to spell save DC when they are obscured in shadow. Importantly, we also want to purchase volume 26 of the On Illithid's tome. Meanwhile, Creation's Echo, a staff granting potentially powerful elemental resistances, will leave here. Since the goal of this playthrough is still to take no damage in the first place, a staff like this does not really seem necessary, and there are plenty better options available in my opinion.
May your travels be safe and swift.
Alright, and with that, we are pretty much done here for today. As you can see, I have briefly brought Gale back into the party, for the simple purpose of reclaiming that 1 point of inspiration we just spent to re-roll. Now, the way we do that is by reading the book we just purchased. They are essentially Omeluum's notes on Illithid society, perspectives on the use of both arcane and divine magic, both usually frowned upon in favor of the Illithid's use of psionics. And as we read the book, Gale earns 30 extra XP and unlocks the Forbidden Arcane Inspiration, and with that, our pool is filled back up to capacity. And that, I think, marks a good point to make the cut for today. In the next episode then, I think we'll finally take that Durgar boat to seek out their outpost, and that should hopefully also get us a bit closer to uncovering the secrets surrounding the Adamantine Forge. So stay tuned for that, and if you've enjoyed today's video, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And as always, if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.